The dawn light filtered through the century-old stained glass windows of the Anderson Mansion's chapel in Greenwich, Connecticut. Sarah Thompson, 58, knelt in the first solid oak pew, clutching a worn rosary between fingers calloused from decades of dedicated work. "Lord," she whispered, "please watch over Eleanor. Something isn't right with her." Sarah lifted her eyes to the statue of the Virgin Mary, the same one that had witnessed countless morning prayers over the past 25 years. The sound of tires on the mansion's driveway interrupted her prayer. Sarah knew that sound, Rebecca Anderson's Porsche Cayenne. Her heart raced. Eleanor's 35-year-old only daughter never showed up this early, let alone unannounced. Through the chapel window, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement. 7-year-old Tommy, the mansion's weekend guest, ducked behind a perfectly trimmed bush. The boy Rebecca kept hidden from Greenwich society. Sarah's heart ached. If only Rebecca knew how much the boy reminded her of Eleanor at that age. The clicking of heels on marble echoed through the mansion's halls. Sarah hurried from the chapel, smoothing her pristine uniform. She had to intercept Rebecca before. "Where's my mother?" Rebecca's sharp voice cut through the morning silence. She stood in the grand foyer, designer handbag dangling from one arm, sunglasses perched on her perfectly styled hair. "I know she's awake. Her car's here." "Good morning, Miss Rebecca. Mrs. Anderson is in her study. She asked not to be." "Save it." Rebecca strode past her, Louboutins clicking against the marble. "Mother, we need to talk about the mansion. Now!" Sarah caught a whiff of Rebecca's expensive perfume mixed with something else. Was that morning sickness? She pushed the thought aside as Eleanor's voice drifted down from the study. "Rebecca, darling? What a surprise." Eleanor's tone was calm, but Sarah detected the strain underneath. She'd been serving Eleanor long enough to know when something was wrong. "Cut the pleasantries, Mother. I've been talking to developers. This property is worth a fortune. It's time to sell." Sarah's heart stopped. Sell the mansion? Her home for 25 years? "The answer is still no." Eleanor's voice hardened. "Where's our... This house has been in our family for generations, I know." Rebecca's voice rose. "But it's eating up money in maintenance. We could make millions. Unless..." She paused. "Unless you're keeping it for your precious housekeeper?" Sarah froze at the bottom of the stairs. Through the study's open door, she saw Tommy peering in from the balcony. "That's enough." Eleanor stood, swaying slightly. "Sarah has been more family to me than..." She clutched her chest, face pale. "Mrs. Anderson!" Sarah rushed forward as Eleanor collapsed into her leather chair. "Get away from her!" Rebecca shoved Sarah aside. "Mother! Mother, what's wrong?" "Sarah!" Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "My desk. The silver USB drive. Promise me." "Call 911!" Sarah ordered, already checking Eleanor's pulse, or a pulsum. Rebecca stood frozen, her designer bag falling to the floor. A pregnancy test stick rolled out, its positive indicator visible to all. Tommy appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down his face. "Grandma Eleanor?" Rebecca whirled around, face white. "Tommy, what are you? How did you..." "The ambulance is on its way," Sarah announced, still holding Eleanor's hand. "Miss Rebecca, your son needs you right now." Eleanor's eyes flickered open. She reached for the desk drawer with trembling hands. "Sarah, take it. Watch after. I'm sorry I never told you." Her fingers pressed a silver USB drive and an old rosary into Sarah's palm. "Told her what?" Rebecca demanded, one arm around a sobbing Tommy. "Mother, what's going on?" Eleanor's eyes met Sarah's, filled with decades of unspoken truth. "Promise me you'll watch it. Only after I'm gone. You'll understand everything. About the baby. About Emma." "What baby?" "Mother, you're not making sense." Rebecca's voice cracked with fear. Sirens wailed in the distance as Sarah clutched the USB drive and rosary. Through the study window, reporters' vans were already pulling up to the gates. News traveled fast in Greenwich when it involved the Andersons. "Sarah!" Eleanor's final whisper was meant for her alone. "Find the other one. You'll finally understand." The paramedics burst in as Sarah stepped back, the mysterious items burning in her pocket. Eleanor Anderson, the woman she'd served faithfully for 25 years, was loaded onto a stretcher, an oxygen mask obscuring her face. The face that had always seemed so strangely familiar. As the ambulance pulled away, Sarah watched Rebecca hurry after it in her Porsche, leaving a confused Tommy behind. Spurred. The boy grabbed Sarah's hand, his small fingers intertwining with hers. "Everything will be all right," she whispered, not knowing if she was trying to convince Tommy or herself. The rosary beads pressed against her leg, and the USB drive felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What had Eleanor meant about the baby? About Emma? And who was the other one? Sarah looked down at Tommy, seeing Eleanor's eyes in his small face, and felt the weight of unspoken truths settling over the mansion like a heavy fog. Somewhere, a photographer's camera clicked, capturing the exact moment before everything would change forever. Through the study window, Sarah watched as more news vans screeched to a halt outside the mansion's gates. A helicopter buzzed overhead. Channel 7 News, no doubt. Greenwich's elite loved nothing more than Anderson family drama. "Mrs. Thompson?" Emma, the rival housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. Her face showed concern, but something else flickered in her eyes. "The press is asking for a statement. And there's a detective here. He says it's about Eleanor's past." Sarah's hand tightened around Tommy's. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket, and the rosary beads seemed to pulse with untold secrets. She'd seen that exact same rosary before, decades ago, in a photo of her own mother. "Tell them no comment," Sarah said firmly, leading Tommy away from the windows as camera flashes intensified. But Emma didn't move. "Sarah," Emma's voice dropped to a whisper, "I heard what Eleanor said. About the baby. About me." Their eyes met in a moment of electric tension. "What happened? We both know what happened that summer 45 years ago." Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "Mother's stabilized, but she's asking for you, not me. Why is it always you?" Sarah looked down at Tommy, then back at Emma, whose face held answers to questions she wasn't sure she was ready to ask. The weight of Eleanor's last words pressed down on her like the gathering storm clouds outside. Whatever was on that USB drive would change everything. Sarah just prayed she'd be strong enough to handle the truth. All of it. The rain came down in sheets as mourners filled the Anderson mansion's chapel. Sarah stood in the back, her black dress a stark contrast to the designer outfits of Greenwich's elite. Through the stained glass windows, camera flashes from persistent paparazzi lit up the storm clouds like lightning. Eleanor Anderson's mahogany casket sat before the altar, surrounded by white roses. Sarah couldn't take her eyes off it. 3 days had passed since Eleanor's final words, and the USB drive remained untouched in Sarah's quarters, wrapped in the mysterious rosary. Rebecca sat in the front row, her face hidden behind large sunglasses despite the dim light. She'd been violently ill all morning, morning sickness becoming harder to hide. Tommy sat beside her, his small hand clutched in hers, their first public appearance together. "Eleanor Anderson wasn't just Greenwich royalty," Reverend Mitchell intoned. "She was a pillar of our community, a devoted mother, and a friend to all." Sarah suppressed a bitter laugh. If they only knew the weight of secrets hanging in this chapel. A movement caught her eye. Emma slipped into the chapel, taking a position opposite Sarah. Their eyes met across the room. Emma's hand went unconsciously to her neck, where an identical rosary hung partially hidden. The service continued as Sarah's mind drifted to yesterday's discovery. She'd been cleaning Eleanor's study when she found it. A yellowed envelope hidden behind a loose panel. Inside, hospital records from 1979 showed not one baby given up for adoption, but 2, twins. And now Rebecca Anderson would like to say a few words. Rebecca stood shakily, one hand pressing against her stomach. She made it halfway to the podium before lurching forward. Sarah rushed to catch her, but Emma got there first. "I've got her," Emma said sharply, helping Rebecca to a side door. As they passed Sarah, a pregnancy test fell from Rebecca's purse. "Thank." The gathered crowd gasped as it clattered across the marble floor, its positive indicator visible to all. "Get out of my way!" Rebecca shoved through the crowd, barely making it outside before retching into the rose bushes. Camera flashes exploded from beyond the gates. Sarah followed with a glass of water but stopped short. Through the rain, she saw Emma holding Rebecca's hair back, whispering something that made Rebecca's eyes go wide. "Mrs. Thompson?" Mr. Harrison, the family lawyer, appeared at her elbow. "A moment, please. There are irregularities with Mrs. Anderson's will, and this." He handed her a photo she'd never seen before. A young Eleanor holding twin baby girls, a familiar rosary draped across the blanket. The date on the back, July 15, 1979. The day Sarah's life changed forever. "The will reading is tomorrow," Harrison continued, "but Detective Morrison has questions about the adoption records. Multiple birth certificates with different names. Eleanor's signature on documents dated when she was just a child herself. None of it adds up." Sarah's hands trembled. "I need to check on Rebecca." But when she turned back to the rose bushes, Rebecca and Emma were gone. A trail of muddy footprints led to Eleanor's private study. Sarah followed, her heart pounding. She reached the study door just as a scream pierced the air. Inside, Rebecca stood frozen before Eleanor's open-wall safe, Emma next to her. A stack of letters spilled across the floor. "It's not possible," Rebecca whispered, clutching a letter. "Mother was adopted? And Sarah? Sarah is—" Before she could finish, Rebecca's eyes rolled back, in force. She crumpled to the floor, the letter floating down beside her. Through the open window, Sarah glimpsed Tommy watching from the chapel balcony, his expression eerily similar to Eleanor's in that old photograph. Thunder cracked overhead as Sarah rushed to Rebecca's side. Emma grabbed the letter before Sarah could read it, her hands shaking. "It's time," Emma said quietly. Eleanor knew this day would come. That's why she left the video. "What video?" "The one on the USB drive she gave you. The one that explains everything about the twins, about what really happened in 1979, about why she chose you to be her housekeeper all those years ago." Sarah felt the weight of the rosary in her pocket, identical to the one around Emma's neck. As if reading her thoughts, Emma touched her beads. "Yes, Sarah. We need to talk about that summer. About our mother. About why Eleanor separated us at birth." The study door creaked open wider. Tommy stood there, Eleanor's eyes staring out from his small face. "Grandma Eleanor left something for this moment too," he said softly, holding up another USB drive. "She said to give it to Aunt Emma when the truth finally came out." Sarah looked between her newly revealed twin, her unconscious niece, and the grandson she never knew she had. Outside, the storm raged on, and tomorrow's will reading loomed like a executioner's blade. The truth was finally clawing its way out of the grave where Eleanor had buried it 45 years ago. The Anderson mansion's library had never felt more suffocating. Afternoon sunlight streamed through towering windows, illuminating dust motes that danced above leather-bound volumes collected over generations. Greenwich's most prominent families filled the antique chairs, their whispers a constant buzz of speculation. Sarah stood in her usual corner, pressed into service one last time to serve tea despite her newfound status. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured, the china cups clinking against their saucers. Across the room, Emma mirrored her movements, serving coffee to the other side. Their identical rosaries caught the light. Rebecca sat alone in the high-backed chair that had been Eleanor's favorite, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. The morning's gossip pages had already announced her pregnancy, complete with speculation about the father's identity. Her face remained a mask of cold composure, but her knuckles were white where they gripped the armrest. "Before we begin," Mr. Harrison adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, "Mrs. Anderson left specific instructions about the viewing of a video." Sarah's heart jumped. The USB drive felt heavy in her pocket. "Mother's final power play," Rebecca's voice dripped with disdain. "Always had to have the last word." Harrison inserted the drive into a laptop connected to the library's projection screen. Eleanor's face appeared, recorded in her study just weeks ago. She looked tired but determined. "If you're watching this, I've finally run out of time," Eleanor began. "Rebecca, darling, stop rolling your eyes." Rebecca stiffened. Her mother knew her too well. "What I'm about to reveal will shock many of you, but every word is true, verified by DNA tests and documented evidence." Eleanor's recorded image took a deep breath. "Sarah Thompson is not just my housekeeper, she is my biological mother." The room erupted. A press. Rebecca knocked over her teacup, porcelain shattering on hardwood. A society matron actually fainted. Furthermore, Eleanor continued over the chaos, Emma Sullivan, whom I also employed, is Sarah's twin sister, my aunt. I discovered this 5 years ago when my genetic condition was diagnosed. This is ridiculous! Rebecca stood, swaying slightly. My case. Sit down, Rebecca, Eleanor's voice commanded. There's more. Your son, Tommy, whom you've hidden away, he's here today, isn't he? Behind the library door, perhaps? The door creaked open. Tommy stepped in, defiant. I've known about him since he was born, Eleanor continued. He has our family's genetic marker, Sarah. Sarah has been unknowingly caring for her own great-grandson. Rebecca clutched her stomach, face pale. Stop the video, I can't. And your current pregnancy, Rebecca? Yes, I knew about that too. The same condition that's killing you, just like it killed me. Unless what? Rebecca whispered. Unless you accept the bone marrow transplant from your biological grandmother. From Sarah. The room spun around Sarah. Emma grabbed her arm, steadying her. As for my will. Eleanor's image smiled sadly. The mansion and foundation go to Sarah and Emma jointly. The corporate holdings to Rebecca, provided she agrees to work alongside them. And Tommy gets what he's always wanted, a family. Rebecca lunged for the laptop, but Detective Morrison caught her arm. Miss Anderson, destroying evidence won't change the DNA results. DNA results? Rebecca's voice cracked. Dawson. Your mother authorized the tests months ago. Morrison held up a file. But we found irregularities in the original adoption records. Someone forged. A scream cut through the library. Rebecca doubled over, blood-staining her designer dress. The baby, she cried. Please, help! Sarah moved without thinking, catching Rebecca as she collapsed. Their eyes met, and for the first time Sarah saw real fear in her niece's face. I've got you, Sarah whispered. Family takes care of family. Why? Rebecca gasped through tears. Why did she tell everyone? Why now? Emma stepped forward, another USB drive in her hand. Because of what's on this one. The truth about who forced Sarah to give up her twins. About who's been blackmailing the Andersons for decades. About why Eleanor waited until now. Thunder. Thunder cracked outside as Sarah held her niece, surrounded by the wreckage of carefully constructed lies. Tommy pressed against her side, his small hand finding hers. The truth wasn't finished with them yet. Not by a long shot. Through the library windows, camera flashes exploded like lightning. Greenwich's biggest scandal was just beginning to unfold. And somewhere, Sarah knew, Eleanor was watching it all play out exactly as she'd planned. Anderson dynasty rocked. Housekeeper revealed as family matriarch, screamed the Greenwich Daily's headline. Sarah stared at the newspaper through the mansion's gates, where a mob of reporters had been camping for 24 hours since the will reading. Sarah! Is it true you were paid to stay silent? Did Eleanor Anderson orchestrate this entire reveal? What about the second USB drive? Camera flashes exploded as Sarah retreated inside. The morning sun cast long shadows through the mansion's windows, where staff huddled in whispered groups, casting furtive glances her way. Everything had changed in a day. Mrs. Thompson, Jenkins, the elderly butler, approached cautiously. Miss Rebecca, she's on the roof. Sarah's heart stopped. What? She took the pregnancy test results, Melix, and a bottle of Eleanor's finest scotch. Sarah raced upstairs, her sensible shoes echoing on marble. Behind her, Emma emerged from the shadows. I'll handle the press. Go! A roof access door was open. Morning wind whipping papers across the wet shingles. Rebecca stood at the edge, designer heels precariously balanced, the scotch bottle dangling from her fingers. Don't come closer! Rebecca's voice cracked. I saw the medical reports. This baby, it has the same condition. Just like Tommy, just like Mother. Rebecca, please. Do you know what it's like? Or a bus light? Rebecca turned, mascara streaking her cheeks. Finding out your whole life is a lie? That your mother was really your grandmother? That your housekeeper is? Her heel slipped. Sarah lunged forward as Rebecca teetered on the edge. Below, cameras clicked frantically. If you fall, Sarah said quietly, Tommy loses everything. Again. Rebecca froze. He's better off. No child is better off without their mother. I learned that the hard way. Twice. But the condition, the baby. There's hope, the bone marrow transplant. I don't deserve your help, Rebecca screamed. After how I treated you, all these years. A small voice cut through the wind. Mom? Tommy. Tommy stood in the doorway, Emma behind him. Rebecca's eyes widened in horror. Tommy, go back inside. But the boy moved with Eleanor's determination, step by step, across the wet roof. Grandma Eleanor left me this. He held up an envelope. For when Mom needed it most. Rebecca's hand trembled as she took the letter, nearly dropping the Scotch bottle. Sarah inched closer. My dearest Rebecca, she read aloud, voice shaking, and reading. If you're reading this, you're about to make a terrible mistake, just like I almost did 30 years ago, standing on this same roof. The Scotch bottle slipped from Rebecca's fingers, shattering on the grounds below. Gasps rose from the gathered crowd. Your grandmother Sarah saved me that day, Rebecca continued reading, just as she saved Tommy when you couldn't face being a single mother, just as she'll save your unborn child if you let her. The genetic condition isn't a curse, darling. It's what led me to the truth, to our real family. Rebecca's knees buckled, self on. Sarah caught her as she collapsed, pulling her back from the edge. I've got you, Sarah whispered. I've got you, sweetheart. Tommy wrapped his arms around them both as Emma shielded them from the photographers now hovering in news helicopters. The USB drive, Rebecca sobbed into Sarah's shoulder. The second one. Emma knows what's on it, doesn't she? Yes, Emma stepped forward. Horrid. It shows who really forced Sarah to give us up. Who's been threatening the family? Why Eleanor waited until now? Who? Before Emma could answer, Jenkins burst onto the roof. Sarah of them. Mrs. Thompson, Detective Morrison is here with a warrant. They're saying the adoption records. There's evidence of. A gunshot cracked through the morning air. On the ground below, chaos erupted as police swarmed the gates. He's here, Emma whispered, face pale. After all these years, he's come to finish what he started. Sarah held her newfound family tighter as sirens wailed in the distance. The truth wasn't just destroying their world. It was putting them all in danger, and somewhere in Greenwich's elite circles, someone was desperate to keep 45-year-old secrets buried. Someone who'd kill to keep the past hidden. The morning sun caught Sarah's rosary beads, throwing light against the mansion's walls. Eleanor had known this was coming. She'd planned for it. The question was, had she planned well enough to keep them all alive? The Anderson mansion's private medical wing hadn't been used since Eleanor's last days. Damn. Now, under harsh fluorescent lights, Dr. Chen studied the genetic test results, while Tommy sat bravely on the examination table, Rebecca clutching his hand. The markers are identical, Dr. Chen said, glancing between 3 generations of medical records. Eleanor's condition, Tommy's symptoms, and, he looked at Rebecca's pregnant belly, the amniocentesis results. Sarah stood in the corner, her own medical file open on the desk. Emma paced by the window, where police still guarded the grounds after the morning shooting. But there's hope, Dr. Chen continued. The bone marrow match between Sarah and Rebecca is extraordinary, and Tommy's young enough that early treatment could. A nurse burst in. Dr. Chen, Rebecca's test results. There's something else. Rebecca snatched the paper, her face draining of color. I'm having twins. The room fell silent. Emma stopped pacing. Like mother. Like mother. Like daughter, a cold voice said from the doorway. Detective Morrison stood there, files under his arm. Or should I say, like grandmother, like granddaughter. This is a private medical, Dr. Chen began. Not anymore, Morrison held up a warrant. These DNA tests reveal more than a genetic condition. They prove fraud, conspiracy, and possibly murder. Murder? Sarah's heart stopped. Eleanor Anderson's original adoption wasn't just forced. Morrison spread crime scene photos across the desk. It was part of a larger criminal enterprise. Baby trafficking through St. Mary's Hospital 1979 to 1985. And guess who was chief of obstetrics then? Emma gasped. Father Michael. The same Father Michael who's been your family's priest for 40 years, Morrison nodded. The one who officiated Eleanor's funeral. The one who disappeared right after this morning's shooting. Tommy suddenly doubled over in pain. Rebecca screamed for Dr. Chen. Torso. His condition's accelerating, the doctor said, prepping an injection. We can't wait any longer for treatment. You're not doing anything until I get answers. Morrison blocked the door. Father Michael's disappearance, Sarah snapped. My great-grandson is dying. Arrest me if you want, but let the doctor work. A commotion erupted in the hallway. Jenkins appeared, breathless. Father Michael! They found him! The old chapel! Annihilated. Emma grabbed Sarah's arm. The chapel! That's where he kept the records, where he performed the black market adoptions. Rebecca tried to stand but staggered, blood-staining her designer dress for the second time in 2 days. Dr. Chen rushed to her side. The twins! She gasped. Tone. Something's wrong. Get them both to the hospital, Sarah ordered. Emma, the records. Already on it. Emma pulled her twin sister close. Be careful. Father Michael isn't working alone. Never was. As paramedics rushed in with stretchers, Sarah caught a glimpse of Tommy's pale face. He looked so much like Eleanor at that age, like the babies in those old photos. Wait, Sarah called to Emma. The second USB drive. Eleanor knew about Father Michael? She knew everything. She was gathering evidence, building a case. That's why, Emma's voice caught. That's why they killed her. Eleanor's death wasn't natural? From Thai. Rebecca tried to sit up on the stretcher. The tea, Sarah whispered, horrible realization dawning. The special tea I served her that morning. Someone switched it. Doors. Morrison's phone buzzed. His face hardened as he read the message. Father Michael's dead. Suicide note confessing everything. He looked up grimly to Terrace. But the handwriting doesn't match his other letters. Someone staged this. Tommy screamed in pain as they loaded him into the ambulance. Rebecca reached for Sarah's hand. Don't leave us, she pleaded. I know I don't deserve. Family stays together, Sarah squeezed her hand. Always. As the ambulances pulled away, Sarah turned to Emma. The chapel? Henry's self. Emma nodded, pulling out Eleanor's old key ring. The chapel. Where it all began. They walked through the mansion's shadowy halls, past whispering servants and police tape, Oliver tape. Outside the chapel doors, Emma hesitated. Sarah, there's something else on that second USB drive. Something about our mother. About why she really gave us up. Sarah touched her rosary beads. Eleanor knew? Eleanor knew everything. She was just waiting for the right moment to... A shadow moved behind the chapel's stained glass. A metallic click echoed in the silence. Someone was waiting for them. Someone who didn't want 40-year-old secrets revealed. And this time, they weren't planning to miss. Stained glass cast blue and gold shadows across the chapel's stone floor as Sarah and Emma crouched behind a wooden pew. The metallic click had come from the confessional Father Michael's old domain. Police are 10 minutes out, Emma whispered, clutching her phone. Morrison says don't. Another click. A floorboard creaked. We don't have 10 minutes, Sarah breathed. The real records are here. Everything Eleanor discovered. A flash of movement near the altar. Sarah caught the gleam of polished shoes. Expensive ones. Hello, Sarah. The voice echoed through the chapel. Or should I call you Mother? Brother Helton. Judge William Harrison stepped into the light. Mr. Harrison's father. The man who'd presided over hundreds of suspicious adoptions in the 1970s. All these years, he continued, watching you serve the child you gave up. Quite the penance, wasn't it? You forced those adoptions, Emma's voice shook. You and Father Michael. We provided a service. Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Unwed mothers, prominent families, everyone got what they wanted. Everyone. Everyone except the children. Sarah stood slowly. What's on the second USB drive, Judge? What were you so desperate to hide that you'd kill Eleanor? Harrison's hand emerged from his suit jacket, gripping a silver pistol. Eleanor was gathering evidence. Birth certificates, bank records, photographs. She even found your mother. Sarah's heart stopped. Our mother? Oh yes, the woman who sold you both before you were born. To fund her husband's political campaign. He gestured with the gun. Your father became a senator. Quite the American success story, Emma gasped. Senator George Maxwell? He's our... Father, yes. Eleanor discovered everything. In half. She was going to expose it all, destroy not just me but half of Greenwich's elite families. I couldn't let that happen. So you poisoned her tea, Sarah's voice hardened. You grandson. Used my own hands to kill my daughter. Poetic, wasn't it? Harrison stepped closer. Just like using your grandson's genetic condition to force this confrontation. Rebecca's pregnancy was an unexpected bonus. A noise from the balcony made Harrison spin. Detective Morrison stood there, gun aimed. It's over, Judge. We found Father Michael's real suicide note. He named names before you killed him. You don't understand. Harrison's hand trembled. The scandal would destroy everything. Our reputation. Our legacy. Your legacy? Sarah's laugh was bitter. Look around you. This chapel witnessed every lie, every stolen baby, every broken family. What legacy? Family. The USB drive, Harrison demanded. Where is it? Right here. Emma held it up. Eleanor gave me a copy too. She knew you were coming. She knew everything, Morrison added. Sensei. The evidence is already with the FBI. Your son confessed an hour ago. Harrison's face contorted. He swung the gun toward Sarah. Then, you'll die like your daughter. A small figure burst from behind the altar. Tommy, pale but determined, swung Eleanor's heavy brass candlestick. It caught Harrison's knee with a sickening crack. The gun clattered across stone as Morrison descended the stairs. Judge William Harrison, you're under arrest for the murders of Eleanor Anderson and Father Michael Sullivan. Sarah rushed to Tommy. You should be in the hospital. How did you... Mom stabilized. He managed a weak smile. The doctor said the twins are okay. I couldn't let him hurt you too. Emma hugged them both as police swarmed the chapel. Eleanor's final revenge, using her own grandson to end it. Not revenge. Sarah touched her rosary. Justice, Liege. Morrison approached with the USB drive. There's more. Senator Maxwell kept records too. Other children, other families. Our father, Emma whispered. Or should we? First, Tommy needs treatment. Sarah held her grandson close. Rebecca needs her transplant. Family before vengeance. As they left the chapel, Sarah paused in the doorway. Sunlight streamed through Eleanor's favorite window, the one depicting prodigal sons and lost sheep found. She planned everything, Emma said softly. Even from beyond, no. Sarah smiled. She gave us the tools. But we chose forgiveness over bitterness. Love over revenge. Like real family, Tommy murmured against her shoulder, and from us. Outside, reporters clamored behind police lines. Tomorrow's headlines would shake American politics to its core. But for now, in the chapel where it all began, 3 generations held each other in the fading light. The truth had finally set them free. Morrison cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson, there's someone else here to see you. An elderly woman stood in the chapel entrance, clutching a familiar rosary. Hello, girls, she said softly. I'm Catherine Maxwell, your mother, and I've waited 45 years to say, I'm sorry. Sarah felt Emma's hand find hers as they faced their past together, then Reber. The chapel bells began to toll, marking the end of one story and the beginning of another. Greenwich Hospital's private wing hummed with expensive machinery. Through the observation window, Sarah watched Tommy sleeping peacefully after his first treatment, his small chest rising and falling beneath a web of monitors. His numbers are improving, Dr. Chen said, reviewing charts. The genetic therapy, combined with Rebecca's stem cells from the twins. It's working better than we hoped. Rebecca dozed in a recliner beside Tommy's bed, one hand protectively over her growing belly, the other holding her son's hand. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her face looked peaceful for the first time in days. She hasn't left his side, Emma whispered, joining Sarah at the window, just like Eleanor used to watch over her. Sarah touched the glass. Have you read it yet? Catherine's diary, their mother's journal, discovered in Eleanor's old safe, sat heavily in Emma's bag. Catherine Maxwell had left it behind after their chapel reunion, too overwhelmed to stay. I can't, Emma's voice cracked, to learn why our own mother sold us. A commotion down the hall interrupted them. Detective Morrison strode toward them, face grim. Senator Maxwell's dead. he announced without preamble. Apparent suicide in his D.C. office. But... Sarah felt her heart sink. The security cameras went dark, just like they did when Father Michael died. Emma pulled out the diary with trembling hands. Then we need to know. Now! They found an empty consultation room. Sarah's fingers traced the worn leather cover, dates matching their birth year. As she opened it, a photograph fluttered out. Catherine Maxwell, young and beautiful, stood beside a handsome George Maxwell. Campaign posters covered the walls behind them. But it was the man in the shadows that caught Sarah's attention. Judge Harrison's father, Emma breathed. The original architect of the adoption scheme. Sarah began to read aloud. George doesn't know about the twins. Judge Harrison Sr. says it's better this way. The campaign needs millions, and these special adoptions he arranges. The money is too good to refuse. But these aren't just unwanted babies, and him. They're being selected for specific traits, specific genetics. Emma grabbed Sarah's arm. The genetic condition. They were tracking it? Morrison leaned forward into the weeks. The Andersons paid the most. Their genetics program, their research into longevity, they needed carriers of the CLK2 gene mutation. Harrison called it designer adoptions. I didn't understand until I saw the lab reports. Sarah's hands shook. They were breeding us, like cattle. Eleanor wasn't supposed to happen, Emma continued reading. A natural pregnancy, carrying the gene they wanted. Harrison said she had to disappear too. Into their program. My own granddaughter. A knock interrupted them. Dr. Chen stood in the doorway, face pale. You need to see this, he held up Tommy's latest results, in Toulon. The genetic therapy isn't just working, it's transforming the CLK2 mutation, creating something new. English, doctor, Morrison demanded, en rel. The combination of Sarah's bone marrow, Rebecca's stem cells, and Tommy's young immune system. It's not just fighting the condition, it's enhancing it, increasing cellular regeneration, extending telomeres. Longevity, Sarah whispered. The Anderson genetics program, they weren't trying to cure the condition, they were trying to perfect it, Emma finished, to extend human life. Morrison's phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read the message. Judge Harrison escaped custody, he announced, and Rebecca's gone. What? Sarah ran to Tommy's room. The bed was empty, monitors silent, a note lay on the pillow, written in Rebecca's elegant hand. They have the twins and me. Harrison says it's time to complete the program. Eleanor tried to stop them, to expose it all. Don't let her death be for nothing. The answer is in her last video, the one she knew I'd make today. Love, Rebecca. P.S. Tommy's safe, he's with Catherine. She knows where Harrison's lab is. Where they took all the babies. Where they'll take mine. Sarah clutched the note as Emma read the diary's final entry. The babies aren't just adopted, they're experiments, and Eleanor found proof. God forgive me, but I have to stop this. Even if it means destroying everything. Even if it means losing the election, others. My daughters deserve to know the truth. The final page was stained with tears, and a familiar rosary bead was pressed between the pages. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. There's more. The genetic enhancement. It's already affecting Tommy's DNA. If the twins carry the same mutation, then Rebecca's babies are the final piece, Emma whispered. The culmination of 45 years of genetic manipulation. Sarah touched her rosary, identical to the one in the diary. Where would Catherine take Tommy? To the one place it all began, Morrison said quietly, the original Anderson genetics lab. Where's that? Emma's face went pale. Under the chapel, in the old crypt, where they kept all the babies, including us. Thunder cracked outside as Sarah looked at the diary, the test results, the desperate note. Eleanor had died trying to expose this. Rebecca might die keeping it hidden. The truth was darker than any of them had imagined. And somewhere beneath Greenwich's hallowed ground, a 45-year experiment was reaching its final phase. The chapel's crypt smelled of ancient stone and dark secrets. Sarah and Emma descended narrow steps, flashlight beams dancing across walls that hadn't seen light in decades. Detective Morrison followed with his weapon drawn, while Dr. Chen carried his medical bag. Eleanor left markers, Emma whispered, touching fresh scratches on the wall. She was down here, documenting everything. Until they stopped her, Sarah's voice echoed. Just like they're trying to stop Rebecca. Their lights revealed a heavy steel door, hidden behind rotting wooden panels. Modern keypad gleamed incongruously against medieval stone. Dr. Chen stepped forward. Rebecca's last tests showed elevated hormones. If she's in labor and they're trying to harvest the genetic material... Don't! Sarah cut him off. Those are my great-grandchildren. Morrison checked his phone. No signal down here. Backup's blind. Emma studied the keypad. Catherine said the code was a date. The day they started the program. Sarah pulled out the diary. The first entry caught her eye. July 4th, 1976. America's bicentennial, she murmured, punching in the numbers. When they decided to play God. The door hissed open. Clinical white lights spilled into the crypt. My God. Morrison breathed. A state-of-the-art laboratory stretched before them, humming with equipment. Glass tubes lined the walls, each containing data about genetic specimens. About children. Sarah, Emma pointed to a familiar name. That's us. Subjects 23A and 23B. Sarah's hands trembled as she read their genetic profile, perfect matches for longevity enhancement, carriers of the pure strain. Mom? A weak voice called from deeper in the lab. Grandmother? They found Tommy strapped to a medical chair, Catherine Maxwell beside him, unconscious. They took my blood, Tommy whispered as Sarah freed him, said the combination with Mom's twins would complete the sequence. A scream pierced the sterile air. Rebecca's voice, filled with pain. Delivery rooms through there, Tommy pointed. But Judge Harrison has... Gunshots exploded in the corridor. Morrison shoved them behind equipment as bullets sparked off metal. Did you think Eleanor was the only one planning? Harrison's voice echoed. She tried to expose us, ruin decades of work. The fountain of youth, written in your family's DNA. Where's Rebecca? Sarah shouted. Fulfilling her destiny. Just like Eleanor should have. The next generation of perfect humans. Emma crept along the wall while Harrison monologued. Sarah saw her sister reach for a fire extinguisher. You're insane. Morrison called out. Playing with people's lives. Playing? Harrison laughed. We're creating immortality. Eleanor's death was regrettable, but necessary. To love the chaff. Just like Rebecca's will be. Another scream. Sarah's heart clenched. Emma swung the extinguisher. Harrison crashed forward as white powder filled the air. Morrison tackled him as Sarah and Dr. Chen ran toward Rebecca's screams. They found her on a surgical table, machines monitoring her and the twins. Judge Harrison Sr. stood beside her, holding a syringe. One more step and I inject her, the older Harrison warned. 45 years of work ends now. The perfect genetic combination. Father, no! Mr. Harrison, their family lawyer, stepped from the shadows. This ends today. A gunshot cracked, had Mac been. Harrison Sr. staggered, the syringe shattering on the floor. Behind him, Catherine Maxwell lowered a shaking pistol. Not my grandchildren, she whispered. Not again. Rebecca screamed as contractions hit. Dalgurge. Dr. Chen rushed forward while Sarah held her hand. Push, sweetheart, Sarah urged. Your babies are coming into a better world. A truthful one. Hours later, in Greenwich Hospital's legitimate delivery room, Rebecca held her twin daughters. Tommy sat beside them, his genetic treatment already showing improvement. Charlotte and Eleanor, Rebecca said softly, named for strength and truth. Sarah watched her growing family as Emma talked with Morrison in the hallway. Thor's downed. The Harrisons were in custody. Catherine was giving a full statement. Decades of files were being unsealed. Mrs. Thompson? A nurse appeared. Her sound. There's a package from Eleanor Anderson's estate. Time-delayed delivery. Scheduled for this exact day. Inside, they found a final USB drive and a note. Dearest family, if you're watching this, the truth has finally won. The genetic program is exposed. But our family's real strength was never in our DNA. It was in our capacity to love, to forgive, to choose truth over power. The babies coming today carry a gift, not of immortality, but of healing. Use it wisely. Use it for good. All my love, Eleanor. Sarah looked at her great-granddaughters, already showing signs of the enhanced genetics, Thor. But more importantly, they were showing signs of their mother's strength, their grandmother's wisdom. Welcome to the family, little ones, she whispered. The real one, Thor. The true one. Outside, dawn broke over Greenwich. A new day, a new generation, a new truth, Thor. And in the hospital nursery, 2 baby girls slept peacefully, carrying in their DNA not just the power to heal bodies, but the strength to heal hearts. The truth had finally set them all free. 3 months after the twins' birth, the Anderson mansion buzzed with activity. Workers restored the chapel's damaged crypt, now a memorial to the children of Project Immortality. In the grand library, Sarah sorted through decades of research files while Rebecca nursed Charlotte and Eleanor in Eleanor Sr.'s favorite chair. The congressional hearings start next week, Emma announced, entering with the morning papers. Senator Maxwell's genetic program exposed across front pages nationwide. Any word from Catherine? Rebecca asked, adjusting Eleanor Jr. in her arms. Our mother's testimony put 30 prominent figures behind bars, Emma sighed. She's in witness protection now. But she left this. She handed Sarah a thick envelope. Inside, detailed accounts of every child in the program, every family affected, and every life altered by genetic manipulation. 217 babies, Sarah whispered, all carrying different variations of the longevity gene, Force. Tommy burst in, his complexion healthy after completing his treatments. Mom! Grandmother! They found another lab! Dr. Chen followed with fresh reports. Thor's stain. A facility in Switzerland. More children, more experiments. But also, he paused, successful treatments. The enhanced genetics are actually curing diseases. Eleanor knew, Rebecca said softly. That's why she let the program continue while gathering evidence. She saw the potential for healing, not just extending life. Sarah touched her rosary. At what cost? How many families destroyed? That's why we're here. Emma pulled out Eleanor's final USB drive, hand. Her last message. We haven't watched it yet. Rebecca's hands trembled. I'm not sure I'm ready. We all need to see it, Tommy insisted. For Grandma Eleanor, the way. The library's screen flickered to life. Eleanor's face appeared, recorded in her final days. My dearest family, she began. If you're watching this, Project Immortality has finally been exposed. The truth about our genetics, about the program's dark purpose, about the lives destroyed in pursuit of eternal life. She paused, sipping her tea, the same tea that would later be poisoned. But our family carries something stronger than enhanced DNA. We carry the capacity for forgiveness. Rebecca, darling, you've learned to love despite your fears. Tommy, you've shown courage beyond your years. Sarah and Emma, you've proven that bonds of heart transcend bonds of blood. Tears streamed down Rebecca's face as she clutched her daughters. The twins you hold today represent hope. Their enhanced genetics don't just offer longevity, they offer healing. The Anderson Foundation will now fund research to help others, ethically and openly. The darkness ends. The healing begins. Sarah reached for Emma's hand as Eleanor continued. Sarah, my beautiful mother, forgive yourself. Emma, my fierce protector, forgive our past. Rebecca, my precious daughter, forge a new future. Tommy, my brave grandson, lead the way. And to my namesake granddaughter and her sister, grow in truth, in light, and in love. The screen went dark. In the silence, baby Charlotte cooed softly. She knew, Rebecca whispered. She knew everything that would happen. No, Sarah smiled gently. She knew we would choose love over bitterness, truth over power, family over fortune. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. The twins' latest tests, their genetic enhancement is stabilizing. They'll be able to help countless others. Through the foundation, Emma added. Legally, ethically, the way Eleanor wanted. Tommy approached the babies, touching their tiny hands. They're going to change the world, he launted. They already have, Rebecca said. They brought our family together. Sarah looked around the library. At her daughter's strength, her sister's resilience, her grandson's courage, her great-granddaughter's promise. The truth had nearly destroyed them, but love had made them whole. Eleanor's real legacy, she said softly, wasn't in our genes. It was in our hearts. Outside, the chapel bells rang, no longer tolling secrets but celebrating truth. The Anderson mansion, once a fortress of lies, now stood as a beacon of hope. And in Eleanor's favorite chair, two baby girls slept peacefully in their mother's arms, carrying in their enhanced DNA, not the curse of immortality, but the blessing of healing. The power of love had transformed their genetic gift from a source of darkness into a light of hope. It was time for a new chapter in the Anderson legacy. One written not in modified genes but in restored hearts. The truth had set them free. Love would keep them that way. Stills. The congressional hearing room hummed with tension as Sarah took her seat before the panel. Camera flashes erupted while Emma squeezed her hand supportively from the row behind. Rebecca sat nearby, the twins sleeping peacefully in their carrier, their enhanced genetics now the center of a national debate. Mrs. Thompson, Senator Claire Hawthorne began, your testimony today will expose decades of illegal genetic experimentation. Are you prepared for the consequences? Sarah leaned into the microphone. The consequences of silence were far worse, Senator. Screens around the room flickered to life, displaying Project Immortality's records, photos of babies, genetic codes, family trees manipulated for maximum enhancement. The Anderson Genetics Program, Sarah continued, her voice steady, began as a search for longevity. It became an exercise in playing God. And your own children, another senator pressed, were among the first subjects. My twins, separated at birth. My daughter Eleanor, experimented on without consent. My great-grandson Tommy, born into a legacy of genetic manipulation. And now, she glanced at the sleeping twins, a new generation carrying this enhanced DNA. The room erupted with questions until Judge Harrison was brought in, handcuffed. The program worked! He shouted over the chaos. Look at those babies. Perfect genetic specimens. We were creating the future of humanity. You were destroying families, Emma stood suddenly, trading babies like commodities, playing with lives for profit. Rebecca approached the panel, Charlotte and Eleanor stirring in their carrier. These are not specimens, Judge Harrison. They're children. My children? And thanks to my grandmother Eleanor's sacrifice, their genetic gift will help others, legally, ethically, properly researched. Dr. Chen stepped forward with medical files. The twins' enhanced genetics show remarkable healing properties. The Anderson Foundation is already developing treatments for terminal diseases. And what of the other children? Senator Hawthorne asked. The hundreds affected by this program? Sarah pulled out Eleanor's final USB drive. My daughter, my brilliant, brave daughter, left us one last message. For this exact moment. The room fell silent as Eleanor's face appeared on screen, recorded just days before her death. Distinguished members of Congress, she began, I stand before you from beyond the grave to expose a truth that cost me my life. Project Immortality wasn't just about extending life, it was about controlling it. But in their quest for power, they created something unexpected. Hope. The cameras panned across the twins, peaceful and unaware of their historic importance. The enhanced genetics can heal, Eleanor continued. Not through illegal experiments or stolen babies, but through proper research, ethical treatment, and open science. The Anderson Foundation pledges its entire fortune to making this right, to helping those harmed by the program, to transforming a dark legacy into a light of hope. Harrison lunged forward. You're destroying decades of progress. No, Sarah stood firmly. We're setting it right. Eleanor died to expose the truth, but she died believing in redemption. The final moments of Eleanor's video played. Let my family's story be a reminder. Our true legacy isn't in our genes, but in our choices. The Anderson Foundation will fund genetic research to help others, to heal instead of harm, to unite instead of divide. This is my final gift to the world. The room erupted in applause as Rebecca unveiled the Foundation's new mission: ethical genetic research, support for affected families, and hope for those seeking healing. Later, in the quiet of the Anderson mansion's renewed chapel, Sarah watched Rebecca rock the twins while Tommy played nearby, fully recovered thanks to their shared genetics. "Eleanor would be proud," Emma said softly. "We've transformed her sacrifice into salvation for others." Sarah touched her rosary. "She knew we would. She knew love would win." Mrs. Thompson. Dr. Chen entered with new test results. "The twins' latest scans. Their genetic enhancement is evolving. Their ability to heal others. It's unprecedented." Rebecca smiled down at her daughters. "They're Eleanor's true legacy. Not immortality through manipulation, but healing through hope." Outside, the sun set on a new era. The Anderson mansion, once a fortress of secrets, now stood as a beacon of transformation. The truth had freed them. Love had healed them. And hope would guide them forward. Spell. The bells of the chapel rang out across Greenwich, no longer tolling for secrets buried, but celebrating truths revealed and lives restored. Eleanor's final message had become their new beginning. 1 year after the congressional hearings, the Anderson mansion's gates opened to the public for the first time. A steady stream of cars filled the circular driveway as families arrived for the grand opening of the Anderson Genetic Healing Center. Sarah stood at the entrance, watching as Rebecca guided the first group of patients and their families through the newly renovated East Wing. The twins, now toddling energetically, charmed everyone they met, their enhanced genetics already helping 3 terminal patients into remission. "The latest results are remarkable," Dr. Chen whispered, handing Sarah a tablet. "Charlotte and Eleanor's genetic markers are actually strengthening with each successful treatment. It's like their DNA learns and adapts. Just like their grandmother." Emma appeared, straightening her Foundation Director badge. "Always one step ahead." The mansion had been transformed. The library where Eleanor died was now a state-of-the-art research facility. The chapel hosted support groups for families affected by Project Immortality. Even the infamous crypt had been converted into a memorial museum, documenting both the dark history and the bright future of genetic healing. "Mom!" Tommy called out, rushing through the crowd. "They're here! The first Project Immortality survivors!" Sarah's heart tightened as a group of adults her age entered. All children from the original program, all carrying various versions of the enhanced genetics. Their eyes held decades of questions. "Welcome home," Sarah stepped forward. "We have much to share." "Is it true?" a woman asked, clutching medical files. "Can the twins really help heal our genetic complications?" Rebecca emerged with Charlotte and Eleanor, now steady on their feet. "They already have 6 successful treatments last month alone. And no more secrets," Emma added firmly. "Every procedure documented, every treatment ethical, every family supported." The sound of breaking glass shattered the moment. Everyone turned to see Catherine Maxwell standing in the doorway, a dropped water glass at her feet. "Mother," Emma whispered. "I had to see it." Catherine's voice trembled. "Had to see what Eleanor's sacrifice created." She stepped carefully through the glass. "What my grandchildren built from the ashes of my sins." Sarah moved to help her, but Rebecca got there first, the twins reaching for their great-grandmother with innocent joy. "The past is past," Rebecca said softly. "The healing has begun." Suddenly, alarms blared from the research wing. Dr. Chen's phone lit up with alerts. "The twins' latest genetic scan," he stared at the results. "Their DNA. It's not just healing others. It's somehow merging with Eleanor's original genetic pattern. They're carrying her cognitive enhancement as well." "Meaning what?" Sarah demanded. "Meaning they don't just heal bodies." Catherine stepped forward. "They can potentially heal minds. Alzheimer's, dementia, neural degradation." "Eleanor knew," Tommy said quietly. "In her final video, she said her grandchildren would carry unexpected gifts." The group moved to the library-turned-laboratory, where Rebecca authorized new genetic scans. The twins, unfazed by the commotion, played with their mother's Foundation badge. "Look at this pattern," Dr. Chen pointed to the screen. "This is one. It's exactly like Eleanor's last DNA test, but enhanced, refined. They're not just carrying her genetics, they're perfecting them. The true legacy," Sarah touched her rosary. "Not immortality through manipulation, but healing through love," Emma finished. Catherine approached her daughters cautiously, and in wreath. "Can you ever forgive?" Sarah pulled her into an embrace, Emma joining them. "Family forgives," she whispered. "Family heals." Outside, more cars arrived, more families seeking hope, more lives ready for transformation, and him. The Anderson mansion, once a fortress of dark secrets, now blazed with light and purpose. The twins' laughter echoed through halls once filled with whispers. Truth had replaced lies. Hope had conquered fear. In Eleanor's old office, now Rebecca's, a final USB drive sat waiting, marked for the day of healing. Its message would wait, as Eleanor had planned. The timing, as always, would be perfect. The bells of the chapel rang out across Greenwich, no longer tolling secrets, but celebrating redemption. A new chapter had begun, and in the grand entrance hall, two little girls with extraordinary genetics played beneath their great-grandmother's portrait, carrying in their DNA not just the power to heal bodies and minds, but the love that heals hearts. Eleanor's legacy lived on. Not in extended life, but in renewed love. The healing had truly begun. 5 years to the day after Eleanor's death, the Anderson mansion glowed with golden light. Hundreds gathered in the restored chapel for a special ceremony, the dedication of the Eleanor Anderson Memorial Wing, now the world's leading genetic healing facility. Sarah stood at the podium, her silver hair elegant against her blue dress, watching her extraordinary family fill the front rows. Rebecca, now the foundation's president, sat with her 7-year-old twins, Charlotte and Eleanor Jr., their enhanced genetics having helped cure over 1,000 patients. Tommy, a tall teenager showing no trace of his former illness, filmed everything for the foundation's archives. 5 years ago, Sarah began, this chapel held dark secrets. Today, it holds hope. Emma, running the foundation's global outreach program, squeezed Catherine's hand. Their mother, now fully reconciled with her daughters, had helped identify and contact every family affected by Project Immortality. Eleanor Anderson uncovered a terrible truth, Sarah continued. But she saw beyond the darkness. She envisioned a future where genetic enhancement would heal, not harm, unite, not divide, love, not control. The twins whispered quietly to each other, their special connection evident in every gesture and test. Their latest genetic scans had revealed something extraordinary. Their DNA was still evolving, becoming more refined with each person they helped heal. Today, we've helped cure terminal illnesses in patients across the globe. We've reversed genetic disorders once thought untreatable. We've reunited families torn apart by Project Immortality's dark legacy. Dr. Chen stood nearby with the latest research results. The twins' ability to heal wasn't just physical anymore. Their presence seemed to accelerate emotional healing too. Families who spent time with them reported faster recovery from trauma, deeper reconciliation, stronger bonds. But Eleanor left us one final gift. Sarah reached for an ornate box on the podium. A message she wanted opened today, 5 years after she left us. Rebecca? Rebecca joined her grandmother, the twins following closely. Together they opened the box, revealing one last USB drive. The chapel screens flickered to life. Eleanor appeared, but not as they remembered her. This was filmed in her youth, decades ago. "My dearest family," young Eleanor began, "if you're watching this, the healing has begun. The twins are 7 now, the age I was when I discovered my own genetic truth. But they carry something I never had. Love without conditions, power without corruption, healing without harm." But current Eleanor Jr. touched the screen, recognizing something of herself in her grandmother's young face. "The Anderson legacy isn't in our enhanced DNA," Eleanor continued. "It's in our enhanced capacity for love. Charlotte, Eleanor, my precious granddaughters, you were born to heal more than bodies. You were born to heal hearts." Rebecca wiped tears as her daughters hugged her. "Sarah, my beloved mother, you've led our family from darkness to light. Emma, my fierce aunt, you've transformed trauma into triumph. Rebecca, my daughter, you've turned fear into hope. Tommy, you showed us all what courage means. And Catherine, you proved it's never too late for redemption." The chapel fell silent as Eleanor's young face smiled knowingly. The truth about Project Immortality was never about extending life and him. It was about learning how to truly live, with honesty, with purpose, with love. Our enhanced genetics don't make us special. Our enhanced capacity for forgiveness does. Sarah felt Emma's hand find hers as Eleanor delivered her final message. The real miracle isn't in our DNA. It's in our hearts. The real healing isn't in our genes. It's in our love. This is my true legacy to you. Not immortality, but infinity. The endless power of love to heal, to transform, to redeem. The screen faded to show recent footage. Hundreds of healed patients, reunited families, transformed lives. The twins' gift multiplied through countless acts of healing and hope. As the ceremony ended, Sarah watched her extraordinary family mingle with those they'd helped heal. The Anderson mansion, once a fortress of secrets, now stood as a beacon of hope. The chapel, once hiding darkness, now radiated light. Charlotte and Eleanor Jr. played near Eleanor's portrait, their enhanced genetics now a blessing instead of a burden. Tommy showed Catherine his latest research findings. Rebecca and Emma discussed the Foundation's expanding global reach. The truth had set them free. Love had made them whole, and Eleanor's legacy lived on. Not through extended life, but through expanded love. Sarah touched her rosary one last time, looking up at Eleanor's portrait, alive. "You were right," she whispered. "The real enhancement was never in our genes. It was always in our hearts." Outside, the chapel bells rang out across Greenwich, celebrating not secrets buried but truths revealed, not lives extended but hearts expanded, not power gained but love shared. The true legacy was complete. The healing would never end. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Sarah's position? How far would you go to protect your family's legacy? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about family, redemption, and the triumph of love over darkness. Remember, just like the Andersons discovered, our greatest inheritance isn't in our blood, it's in our capacity to love, forgive, and heal. The truth may set you free, but love keeps you whole.